I have a very special guest. We have Aram, which is the founder of 4 Weeks to the Beach, which I think is a fantastic Instagram name just because it pops and it very clearly defines exactly what his program does. But we got connected through a mutual friend, Lexi Tavares, who is a PTBI student and a PTBI coach, who said that this would be a great resource or someone to bring into our community. So I wanted to bring him onto the podcast here to share his story and to share what he's about, because we had a conversation before and we connected with the fact that coaches in the space need to have a level of standard when it comes to their actual coaching practices. I've said this before, the best students in PTBI are not the ones that continue investing into their business, but the ones that continue investing into their education. So Aram, I appreciate you hopping on. Why don't you go ahead and start by bringing us up to speed with where you're at? I know that you have 4 weeks to the beach. You've been the coach for a while. You're in San Diego. So, give me a snapshot on what your life looks like today.
Well, first of all, thanks for bringing me on. I'm not going to disappoint anybody because he said I'm a very, very special guest, and he's already lying to you all because I'm not that special. What separates me from the pack is that I'm fucking consistent, and I think that's what we're missing a lot of in this industry. Whether how dare we tell our clients to be consistent, and then we aren't, and then we wonder why our businesses aren't growing or why we're not feeling good about ourselves, whatever it is. Everything in this world from a success standpoint is rooted in consistency. And I've just been ferociously consistent with the boring, basic shit. I started off as a economics major in college, which led me down the path of working for a trading firm where we traded commodities. So I kind of got a little bit of a taste of the Wolf of Wall Street lifestyle, making way too much money as a young kid who didn't know how to manage any of it, spending most of it on bullshit that didn't really serve me as an individual, lots of drugs, lots of partying, which was fun, but doesn't really develop you as an individual or a human being. Got laid off in 2012 from finance and got my first gym job, like my first formal entry into fitness was working for Equinox in Greenwich, Connecticut. After getting a NASM CPT and then going through their certification courses in-house. Did that for about a year, got lured into the sales world because I was always chasing money at the time and I wasn't really chasing personal fulfillment. That was another that we'll talk about that, I'm sure, at some point today. And, just bounced from sales job to sales job, didn't know what the hell I was selling, didn't know how to sell it, didn't really give a shit to understand how to do any of that. Just kept assuming that I was gonna make money just by being present, and that's just not how it works. And then found myself working in a deli making 14 bucks an hour making sandwiches in my 30s, and just I don't know, I don't want to say it was rock bottom, but I was living in a $900 basement apartment with my dog in downtown Stamford, Connecticut, very, very lost. Had still some of the same behaviors left over that I had in my 20s of just kind of soothing with booze and drugs and trying to go out every weekend and still not really figuring shit out. And I just couldn't really understand what path my life was taking until one day I fucked up a bagel order because I was hungover, and my boss basically told me to redo cutting 150 bagels. And I told him to get fucked, and he fired me that day. Sorry, my dogs are going to bark for a second. So he fired me that day. I walked out pissing and moaning, and basically was sitting on my couch at noon that day, was wondering like, what the fuck is going on? What am I doing with my life? And then I called him back and I begged for my job back. And I begged for my job back because I realized that he was right and I was wrong. He had a standard in his business that he was trying to uphold. And I didn't follow the standard. I just did whatever the fuck I wanted to do because I was being a selfish prick, and I didn't respect this process. I didn't respect a process, period. And I thought that, like, what's the difference if I cut these bagels in halves or quarters? Well, he's like, well, you have to cut them in half and in quarters because that's what these people are paying for and that's what they expect. And that's how I make a living, is by delivering on what I promise. And that was probably the best lesson I ever learned in my life. So in my 30s, going from making 100 something $1,000 a year to making 14 bucks an hour, getting fired from a sandwich making job, which how do you do that? And it humbled the shit out of me, and it made me realize that integrity is probably the most important thing in this world, and without it, you're fucked. And I poured that same process into my coaching business, and I kind of started getting all my old clients back that I had at Equinox. I started training people in person, I started to realize that training people in person was only a small part of the puzzle, that they weren't really getting the results I wanted them to get because I wasn't controlling their nutrition. I didn't really understand nutrition very well at that time. I wasn't really well versed in the lifestyle aspect and human psychology. And I just wasn't offering a very good service. I was just putting people through sets and reps and being a rep accountant, which was very unfulfilling. And after COVID hit, I realized that I needed something more. And I realized that I needed another piece of this industry, which was the nutrition and the online coaching side. So I invested a lot of time and money in like 2018 to 2020 in getting things like precision nutrition and NCI level 1 and 2, and just furthering my education just from a basic CPT to a couple of other things. Started slowly remote coaching, very imperfectly, very messily. Created my own Squarespace website, which looked like dog shit, but worked. Attached Stripe to it so I can collect payments, and just started putting out really helpful, good content on Instagram that was very shareable, very thought provoking. And my Instagram account went from like nothing to like 45,000. Business obviously started to grow because my eyeballs started to grow, but I was also very much not sales based. I was just continuously offering a lot of solutions to people's problems, answering every DM, answering every comment, offering free phone calls to anybody who wanted to talk to me about any problems they were having, and just never selling them on anything. Just being like, here, take all of this information and just trust me that I know what I'm talking about. And if you ever need more formal help that you're ready to actually pay for, just know that I'm here. And fast forward to now, living in Southern California, you know, making a very, very comfortable, good living, hosting an event for coaches to try to get them the education that they need. Just everything's smooth, man. Everything's peaceful. And it's because I spent the time doing it the wrong way for long enough.
Do you feel like now with where you're at, you feel like you're over the hump? Like you feel like you kind of got what you needed to get figured out. Now you're in a place where like, shit, I feel like I made it.
I don't know that do we ever really feel like we made it? That's a personal problem. And that's something I actually am working through with therapy and life coaching. Like I have somebody that I work with, to keep myself even keel. And one of the things that I'm working on is just being able to accept things as they are and not wanting to always strive for more or better when it's unnecessary. Because I think sometimes we put a lot of pressure on ourselves because we see it. Like, you know, you make 20, you see somebody else who makes 50. You're like, well, fuck, well, I want to make 50. It's like,
Hmm.
why? Why? You don't want to make 50 because you don't want to have the problems that come with making 50. You don't want to have a staff. I want to be a solopreneur. I don't want to have a team of people. I don't want to have VAs and I don't want to have assistant coaches. That's not the business I want to run. So maybe that means I'm not going to make 50 grand. And that's okay. I don't give a shit because that the money part isn't what makes you happy. It's what you do with that money and it's what you do with your time. And I think chasing an arbitrary number is no different than your client chasing a number on the scale for no fucking reason. So unless you break these things down and understand the deeper, darker parts of yourself and how you're driven and why you're driven, it's just you're gonna end up just chasing money and being disappointed.
Yeah, I actually agree with you, man. We have a split in our program. We have PTBI, which is helping coaches get started, make the first 10 grand a month. And then we have Takeover, which is, scaling to 20, 30, 40, 50K a month with team members. And before we bring anyone on into Takeover, we're like, look, you can stop here. You can make 10 to 20 grand a month by yourself and literally have a great living. But understand that if you take this step, you are sacrificing a lot of your freedoms, a lot of your, responsibilities outside of the business now get funneled into the business. I'm like, this is a choice that you now have to make. And I'm very, very transparent about that. So I agree. And you know what? When I was a fitness coach, the absolute sweet spot for my time versus how much I made was around 10 to 15 grand a month.
Yeah. Yeah,
That was
man.
that was the sweet spot.
I'm so happy that you have that distinction and you have that conversation because we live in a void of a lot of information, or we live in a world with a lot of information, but there's not a lot of context.
Mhm.
And we're always missing context. So whether that's with the dissemination of nutrition and fitness information, whether that's business coaching, everybody makes claims, but nobody describes where the claims come from. So it's like, make your first 10K. Cool, sounds great. How the fuck do I do that? And what's going to make that happen? Then it's like when you're making 10K, why do you want to make 20? What is it about this number that drives you? Like for me, I don't have a large appetite for money, dude. I have a 2015 Subaru Crosstrek that's paid off that will literally run until it's got 250,000 miles on it. I can give a shit less. I live in a nice apartment, but it's nothing extravagant. Obviously it's Southern California, so you know how it is, dude. You just
Hmm.
you just pay for the weather,
Yeah.
which I'm happy to pay because it's worth my mental health. And for me, if I can go out to a nice dinner every once in a while, if I can go out and get on a plane and travel somewhere without feeling the sting of spending that money on a ticket, the hell else do I need? I don't want to have kids. I'm not married. Like I have a really supportive partner. We have dogs. Life is simple, but it's fulfilling and it's
Hmm.
peaceful and it's nice. And it's because I've spent 15 years doing it what I think to be the wrong way, to do it the long way. Everybody wants it fast now. Our clients want fast results. Coaches want fast 10K months. And the reality is why the fuck do you deserve to make $10,000 a month? Like, have you ever stopped to actually think about what you offer and why is it so good that it's worth $10,000 a month? And I don't think anybody ever stops to think about that. Like, what are you actually putting out into the world outside of macros and calories? Chat GPT can do a better job than some of these coaches out there that are doing it. And they're charging $500-$600 a month. And their business coaches are telling them to charge more. And I charge $298 a month. And after 3 months, I drop my clients' prices down to $195 and they can stay for as long as they want. Guess what that does? Increases annual lifetime value of that client. They stay forever.
Yep.
They get an awesome service. They know that they can stay forever. They know that 195 doesn't pinch them too much. They know that I'm always available. I have a good system in place. I'm always accessible. I respond in seconds, if not minutes. That's what we're getting paid for. We're getting paid to remind people to do the shit that they have to do. We're not solving cancer problems here. We're not curing it. We're not drastically improving somebody's life. We're basically just telling them, hey, eat a little better, move your body a little bit more. We're maintaining that level of autonomy for that person to learn something, hopefully over the course of their relationship with you. I don't think that has to come at a massive price tag. And I think it's gotten so ridiculous now where people are just charging I mean, I see some coaches that are charging four figures a month. And I'm like, how do you expect anybody to afford you for more than a couple of days? And what do you like? How do you even justify outside of you drawing lab work and blood labs and prescribing medications, which you can't do as a coach? Like, what are you offering that's so egregiously amazing that you get to charge $1,000 a month for? It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I think you and I at some point in the future will have to have a conversation over a cigar about, personal fulfillment and chasing. Because I went through something similar about 2 years ago. PTBI blew up and I was young and I was like, I want to, spoil myself. And you end up creating these situations in which you're making money for, you know, um, like validation, but then you're stuck on the treadmill because now you need to make more money to maintain. And I was like, it's not worth it, man. It's just not worth it. So I've recently come into a place myself where I'm like, dude, as long as my wife is good, as long as we have, some money in the bank for a rainy day, as long as I can watch movies and eat ice cream and not fucking stress and be worried about work on Monday, I'm good. I love that. But to switch the topics, I want to talk about what we brought you on here for. So you have a coaching summit next year, and we'll dive into the details of that. But what do you feel is missing in the industry with fitness coaches when they're getting their NASM CPT? Now they're ready to start their online business. You and I both know NASM CPT is literally the tip of the iceberg and really doesn't prepare coaches with what they need to start and successfully grow an online business or even be a well-rounded coach. So what did you need to learn to fill the gaps, and what do you think is the missing part for a lot of these coaches?
So it's good to have something entry level, especially because for me, I started working at a gym, right? So like that was my first exposure to like formal uh professional fitness. And obviously to work for a gym or to work for a coaching company, you have to have some type of accredited, recognizable certification. And like your ACEs and your ISSAs and your NSCAs and all and your NASMs, those are great starting points, but they lack the depth and they lack the application that's necessary to then take those clients through different phases of body comp change, or maybe you have a client who's in perimenopause, or maybe you have a client who had a bariatric surgery, or maybe you have a client who's over 60 who has injuries, or maybe you have a client who's got a really bad emotional eating issues or food relationship problems or body image problems, so the psychological portion is void. So what you'll realize very quickly is that you're not just dealing with robots who are just going to perform 3 sets of 10 and eat their macros. You're dealing with highly dysfunctional and emotionally void individuals who have been basically telling themselves a story for 25, 30 years. And they've been caught in a system that's made them fail over and over and over again. And you have a lot of psychological issues that have arisen from that. So your weekend CF level one or your 3 month NASM course doesn't equip you to deal with those problems. So what I did was I mean, dude, from 2018 to 2020, I basically maxed out 2 credit cards. I traveled from event to event all over the country. I went to every seminar I could possibly find. I read every ounce of research that was getting published by the Alan Aragons and by the Bill Campbells of the world to try to understand deeper levels of nutrition and training, and the Brad Schoenfelds of the world. And I aligned myself with the best in the industry, and I would pay them for their time. Like there was times where I was hopping on the phone with Alan Kress and I was talking to him about hormone dysfunction, or there was times where I would call Jeff Black and I would say, "Hey man, like I'll pay you however much you charge me for the hour to ask you about client case studies of people who can't lose fat no matter what I do." And that's how I gathered my information. I learned by doing. I learned from people who had been doing it for twice or 3 times as long as I have, because those are the people who have the information. They have the anecdotal evidence that's going to make it work. Because the studies are the studies and the research is the research, and a lot of that shit doesn't really change much, and a lot of it really doesn't get extrapolated to the populations that we're working with. So it's hard for us to look at this stuff and standardize it. So we have to go and seek more specified information based on the problems that we're seeing in our populations. And the purpose of the event that I created was to be able to take a centralized location, throw in the educators that I learned from, and let them teach you directly what I had to go and get and piecemeal together for 6 years of a career that was online. Because it's not easy to find credible information. You don't know who's bullshitting you. You don't know whose courses are good.
I was
And
just about to ask them, like, where does someone even begin to find anyone to learn from? Because essentially what you're saying is you found mentors and
yes.
not just business mentors. And I'm gonna shoot myself in the foot here and say business mentors are only good to take you so far.
Yeah.
After that, you have to continue investing into your fitness education. But where does someone even start? Like, you know, they have the NASM. What would you say is like, okay, you got the NASM, you're ready to start your business. What is the next most important skill for someone to learn that will give them the widest range to be able to help people? Is it gut health? Is it hormones? Is it, mindset? Where's the first place to start?
Have a decent enough background on nutrition and training first. So I think things like NCI level one and two, I think things like prescript or for training, or like J3U, which is John Jewett's program
Mhm.
for it's all around functional health, nutrition training, a little bit more geared towards the bodybuilding side, but let's be honest, bodybuilding and body comp are the same thing. Like you could take bodybuilding principles and apply them to Mrs. Jones, who's 45, and she's still going to get a good outcome as long as you dumb down the protocols a little bit for a general population person. So just understanding that these people have done it for longer. And I knew who I was following, right? Like I was following like the Joe Bennett's of the world and the Mike Israetels of the world. And what I would do is I would just shoot my fucking shot, bro. I would just literally DM them and be like, hey, can you answer a couple of questions for me? Like, I'm happy to pay you for your time, or can you redirect me to some textbooks or some written materials that I can review to learn this stuff by myself? Or is there a Google search that I can do on certain things that I don't understand? Like, one concept that coaches don't get very well, and if you're listening to this, learn this concept through and through: bioenergetics. So bioenergetics is the three main energy systems of the body, which use the three different fuel sources that we have. Most coaches do not know how to match nutrition to fitness, right? They either know how to give somebody a training plan or they know how to give somebody a macro plan. They don't know how to conjoin the two properly to create a long lasting result, nor do they understand how to pivot people through different phases of training throughout different goals that they might have as they evolve throughout their journey, because not everybody wants fat loss forever, nor should they pursue fat loss forever, right? Like it's almost like always chasing money. At some point, you have to chase something else for a little while to put that thing down and know that you can take a break from it. So it's not always this pursuit of fat loss. Maybe somebody wants to learn how to get a pull up. Maybe somebody wants to learn how to deadlift. Maybe somebody wants to compete in powerlifting. Maybe somebody wants to compete in endurance running. So you have to know that when you fuel those different activities, they require different amounts of calories and macronutrient targets. So bioenergetics is one of the things they teach in almost every single NASM book and nutrition book, but they never get into the depth of it and how to actually practically apply it. So even something like just Googling bioenergetics and then understanding the depths of it by asking Chat GPT to explain it to you better, or asking a coach who knows better than you do, Mike T. Nelson, Alyssa Olenek. These are, I mean, I'm going to name drop a lot because these are people I learned from. And these are just abundantly wealthy, smart people who just understand this stuff because they're PhDs, they're researchers, they did the work, and then they also coach people. Because there's a disconnect between academia and practicality. Like people who are super, super smart and live in a lab setting don't know how to actually deal with a human being because they've never had to do it, right? So, but if you're super, super smart and you've also coached human beings, well, you're the fucking perfect person to learn from because you know the science and you know the anecdote. You compare the two together. So whoever you think is good, ask them where they got their information from. Like keep going to the top of the ladder and run out of space because I think not enough people are doing that. I was so curious. I asked everybody everything that I could. If I go to conferences, I don't give a fuck about taking a picture with Lane Norton. I want to ask him why he's so smart. Where did you learn from? Who taught you? Like if I'm in front of Mike Israetel, I don't give a shit about asking him about powerlifting or weightlifting. I want to know about like, let's talk about how you know so much about hypertrophy training and where did you learn? Because I want to learn from that person. But what do people do at conferences? It's a bunch of fucking pictures. It's a bunch of cloud chasing. I got to meet Lane Norton. Who gives a shit? Fucking Lane Norton leaves that room and nobody knows who he is.
Mm-hmm.
He's the coolest person in the fitness and nutrition world. But if he's walking down Times Square, 90% of the people wouldn't even turn twice to look at him. He's not The Rock. He's not Kate Beckinsale. Nobody gives a shit. But I think too many people are trying to find status in themselves by attaching themselves to the status of others.
Mm-hmm. So let's switch gears and talk about this event. What inspired well, first off, what is the event? What inspired the event? And why put this event together for the industry? What are you bringing to the table?
Well, I'm stupid and I want to lose a lot of money. That's why I hosted an event. No, but in all seriousness, I've been to enough events to understand what they're missing, and I've understand what disappointed me about events. So I basically just said to myself at one point, like if they're doing it this way, I can do it better. That was literally and it wasn't an ego thing. It was just basically like, okay, I go to an event, I pay $500-600 for a ticket. I don't get one meal. If I want a meal, I have to pay for a fucking VIP ticket. If I want access to speakers, I have to pay for a VIP ticket. I have to Uber from place to place. I got to figure out where I'm getting breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then half the time at some of these events, you're getting the same speaker over and over and over again every single year saying the same shit. And I was tired of it. I mean, I spent thousands of dollars over the course of 4 years when I was first developing my career to travel to these events. And every time I went, I'm like, I'm fucking disappointed. And this sucks. And like I just went to fucking Dallas or I went to Georgia or I went to Florida for the seventh time and I got nothing out of it. There was no ROI
And
outside of me just collaborating.
I was gonna say, what kept you going? Why did you keep going to more if they were disappointments?
I found them to be fun because I got to connect with industry professionals. So I like the networking side of things. But here's the thing, dude. ROI is only measured by the actions you actually take. Right. So, like, if you come to my event and you spend $848 or $998 on a ticket, which is the regular price, and you sit in the back, you don't take notes, you don't talk to anybody, you don't attend the social functions, then you're not going to have an ROI. You just wasted a fucking 2.5 days in Vegas and you got nothing out of it. Like, I at least immersed myself in the event. I talked to people, I connected with speakers. I asked people to get on podcasts. I asked to be on their podcast. What are you working on? How's your business? What can I learn from you? Like I did my thing while I was there. Even if the stuff on stage wasn't monumentally helpful because I knew it or I already had been exposed to it, I then asked them deeper questions. But a lot of people go to events and they just like it's almost like business coaching, right? People sign up with you and they don't do anything you tell them to do. Then they're like, well, why didn't I make 10K?
Hmm.
Well, because you fucking sat on your hands for 6 months and you did nothing. So there is no ROI from the work that you don't do. Just like there's no ROI from events that you go to and don't immerse yourself into. But a lot of times the events just don't have very practical information. Like for me, I do new speakers every single year. So if you spoke in 2023, you're not speaking in 24, you're not speaking in 25. I might at some point, if the event survives financially, I might do like a greatest hits and bring back like the top speakers that everybody loved. But I'm going to ask them to have a topic that was different than what they spoke on the first time. Maybe the same area of expertise, but said in a different way or said completely differently. Um, I do all meals included because I want people to be able to eat together and collaborate and talk. No, there's no VIP. Everybody pays one ticket price and everybody gets access to everything because I want everybody to be on the same playing field. I don't want people to feel like they're left out or that they had to pay extra to get access to speakers. I don't pay my speakers. Most people do. I don't pay my speakers because I expect my speakers to already be somebody that's established in the industry who doesn't need the money. And they're just going to come because they want to be philanthropic, they want to give back, and let's be honest, they probably have a course to sell. So cool, if you're on stage and you're a gut health expert and you have a gut health or GI mapping or hormone course and you want to sell it for 70% off, go right ahead. I'm happy with that. So I want to put people on stage who want to be there, who don't expect anything in return, because to me, that's integrity. That's why you're there. You were once in those seats, and now you're giving back to those same people that were in those seats again. So it's everything is about the ticket holders. Obviously, I do care about my speakers, but like that's not my priority. My priority is to fill the cup of the individual who bought a ticket. And I want to remove all the logistical bullshit away. I don't want you to have to Uber from place to place, wonder where you're getting your next meal. I want you to show up, leave your wallet in the room, bring your notebook, come down, have a full day, meet a shit ton of people, learn a bunch of stuff you can implement into your practice today. Like the stuff that's on stage, man, like there are literally people telling me that when they leave that meeting, they leave that hour lecture, they're texting their clients what changes they're going to make in their plan that day.
Mm.
That to me is an event. Like that to me, like I went to ISSN one year and they talked about creatine. I'm like, are we fucking kidding me? Are we going to talk about creatine for the 97th time? We get it. It works. 5 grams a day, mail it in, we're done.
Yeah.
I don't need to hear about the latest study on creatine again.
I was gonna ask you, what kind of speakers have you had in the past, and what kind of speakers are coming this year? What can people expect to learn from your event? Are they going to learn any business stuff? Is it all practical implementation for their clients on the coaching side? What does that look like?
So this year we have, I mean, obviously everybody knows who Ellen Aragon is, I would imagine. So we have Ellen Aragon talking about how to manipulate calories for people that reach a fat loss plateau. I've got a woman named Barbie Bowles talking about menopausal uh, interventions for women in menopause and how to deal with menopausal clients. I've got Nick Shaw talking about hypertrophy training on how to build muscle in general population clients. I've got Jamie Shiarla talking about how to deal with clients who have body image issues to the point where they're not even able to enjoy the results they have. I have Jeb Stewart Johnston talking about how to deal with clients who have amazingly bad emotional eating issues and how to help fix those issues, which is huge because that's 90% of our population.
Hmm.
I've got Joey Munoz, who's a nutrition PhD, who's going to talk about how to deploy nutritional programming for different populations. I've got Joe Zundel, who's a cancer researcher, who's going to talk about mitigating cancer risk in populations. So it's a very applicable 14 speaker lineup. You have so there's going to be two speakers speaking at each time per hour in two different rooms. And if you miss somebody on day one, you get to see them on day two.
Oh, that's cool. I
Yep. So
like
it's
that.
so it's kind of like pick your own track. So like let's say for example, you know everything there is to know about training and you don't give a fuck. Well, don't go watch Nick Shaw. Go watch Crystal Guevara, who's going to be talking about GLP-1 drugs and how they affect the population. As far as business is concerned, only one person is going to be talking about business. He's the guy who owns TRM, which is Trainer Revenue Multiplier. They actually offered me free business coaching because I lost so much money in the event in 2024 that they felt bad for me. And he's like, I'll just give you 6 months worth of free business coaching to try to help recoup your costs, which has been a great experience for me. And, but I've been in this industry for so long, like I already know the systems, I know the practices,
Mhm.
I know the tactics, I know the lead funnels, I know the email marketing. I understand the power of the newsletter and email list. I understand outreach and fulfillment. So I don't personally need business coaching. It's just been a nice validation of understanding what I'm already good at and what I need to ratchet my skills up on. But I don't want this to be a business of fitness conference. I want this to be a tactical, what are you missing as far as knowledge, practical knowledge base to be more confident to deal with client problems.
Good. I like that. Yeah, like I said, that's what I want to start adding into PTBI. We're currently working on a course on, how to take the knowledge that you've taken from a personal training sir or maybe from your school and actually apply it. Because I feel like the certifications in school, they don't actually teach applications. All just theory, hypothesis, how stuff works, but not actually how it applies to the clients. So I want to make sure all students going through PTBI that it means something. If you're a PTBI alumni, that means something in the industry because you likely know your shit because
Yep.
you've gone through the program. Um, so tell me a little bit more about what people can expect to take away from the event outside of just the knowledge. Because, like you said, I've gone to a few events, and the actual events themselves are kind of a ball buster. But the connections that I've met from the few in-person events that I've done have lasted me years. A lot of my best friends to this day that I call up on the phone and talk about my problems with are people that I've met at in-person events that I've just flown to by myself. So what can people expect to take away outside of just sitting in a chair and, taking notes?
So most of us are online coaches, right? I mean, that's kind of the industry trend. Like a lot of people are getting away from in-person training. A lot of people are moving away from brick and mortar because it's very expensive. So most people are trying to break through into this online space. What happens when you're an online coach? You sit in front of a fucking computer all day long. You got a couple of Instagram buddies that you might chat with and bitch to every once in a while. You might have a business coaching group that you're attached to. There's a couple of Zoom calls a week or a month, but there's no personal connectivity anymore, which basically makes you lose your personal communication skills. And you end up kind of almost being an introvert. And if you are an introvert, you become even more introverted because now you're sitting in front of a screen all day long. So this helps you sharpen your skill set on how to communicate with human beings, how to make connections, how to be able to ask people questions, how to be curious. And like you said, the connections that you meet at these events, I'll give you a great example. In 2019, I met Brad Jensen, sober bodybuilder on Instagram, massive account now, super nice guy, has a great story. And after I left the event, we stayed in touch on Instagram. He invited me out to Utah to do a podcast. So boom, right there. I'm not even a coach yet. I fly out to Utah on my own dime. I fucking scare the shit out of myself because it's the first time I ever did it. And that opportunity essentially then made me more confident to start doing things like Instagram lives with other coaches. I started booking podcasts with other people because of the clips that came out of that podcast. And I got some social media proof on how smart I was and how good I was at what I was doing. And that was it, dude. That was like that like I to this day I thank Brad every day because he launched my career. If I didn't meet Brad at coaching con, I didn't talk to him, I didn't spend time with him, he would have never given me that shot. And he did, and he took a shot at me. And there's people in this industry that lift other people in this industry up, right? Like the Andrew Coates is the world who, like, if you know Andrew Coates, I mean, that guy's got a massive account. He's got a lot of credibility. People love him. He's like the mayor of fitness. He connects everybody together, and then at some point I had Lexi on my podcast and Lexi had me on her podcast. And Lexi told me about what you guys were doing at PTBI. And I asked her for a connection to you to speak to your audience. Like, this is what networking is all about. You don't get to network sitting in front of your computer. You
Mhm.
just don't. I mean, yes, you can do it to some degree, but it's very transactional. It ends up being like, what am I doing for you? What you can do for me, as opposed to building genuine rapport and genuine connections to where you do gain friendships and you do have that. Like, hey, I'm going to fly out to Vegas. I'm going to go spend time with Zakk. I'm going to go get dinner with Zakk. Or Zakk comes to San Diego. I want to have coffee with him, and I want to be able to talk business strategy while walking around PB. Like, you don't get to do that standing in front of the computer. And because this industry is going so remote, so fast, and this is our future, this is the big thing that's missing that people don't value enough.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Well, Aram, what would you say is the number one thing you'd say for fitness coaches looking to get started and see success in this industry? Not for your clients, but for coaches who are, just getting started. They're looking over the edge, thinking, is this even possible? What would you say is the number one most important piece of advice for them?
The same way you tell your clients to believe in the long game and believe in the process, if the process is good, and that's the big caveat, right? You have to have a good process in place. The number one thing I would tell most coaches is take care of the people you have in front of you. I don't care if you have a tiny little audience on Instagram, pour into that audience. Give them as much of your knowledge and as much of yourself that you can, and don't ask for anything in return until you've earned it. With the same thing, if you have 4 clients, be the best coach that those 4 clients ever had. Don't just sit there and wonder about the next 15 people that you haven't gotten yet. Everybody's always trying to make that next dollar, get the next client. They forget that they have people in front of them that need their help, that deserve their help and deserve their attention. And if you have a business that's built on fulfillment and that's built on integrity, that basically says, if I promised you something, I'm going to deliver it to you 365 days a year, every single day, tirelessly, guess what? That client's never going to leave. And that referral network that you're going to have because of all the clients who love you, I don't care if it's two of them. If you're working with your mom's cousin and you're working with your grandmother's friend, and those people get results, and you're the best coach they ever had, they're going to sing your praises. And you're not going to have to worry about client acquisition because you're going to have people pouring into you because you've poured into them. And that's the one thing I see that nobody wants to do anymore is customer service. Customer service is fucking dead. And if you were a good customer service representative, you're going to be a much better coach than anybody else out there.
I agree. Dude, I mean, my entire business started because my very first client was my uncle. And and literally all of my clients came through my uncle and it spread out like wildfire. And I remember back in 2018, I heard Amanda Bucci say something similar that your next client comes from the client that's literally on your desk.
Yeah.
Right? The client that's right in front of you is going to lead you to your next client indirectly, whether you know it or not. So totally agree. And also, too, something you said at the very beginning of this podcast was how you do or following the process, being consistent. What are your thoughts on the saying how you do one thing is how you do everything? Because personally, I think it's bullshit because I see so many people that take their tout their fitness journey and, treat it as like a moral high ground. And then when it comes to executing their business, they can't show up.
So that comes down to integrity and having standards. And I think obviously your standards for different areas of your life will change, right? The way that you are with your family is going to be a little bit different than you are with your friends, is going to be a little bit different than you are with your coworkers. So I think having integrity means to me, like integrity is one of my core values. It just means doing what you said you were going to do. And I think as long as you have a set of standards and values for your business, and you have to actually sit down and clearly define what that is. Like for me, my standard is integrity, my standard is education, and my standard is fulfillment. Like my job is to make you feel seen and heard every single day. My job is to deliver on what I promised, and my job is to be the most knowledgeable person in your life who you're paying for. And I think too many coaches, again, are worried about different things. It's about money, right? It's not about systems. It's like anything else. Like, where does fat loss come from? It comes from a calorie deficit. Well, how do you induce a calorie deficit? You have to follow an actual plan. If you don't follow the plan, you're not in a calorie deficit, you're not going to get results. So if you don't have a plan for your business, if you don't have standards and practices that are rooted in your identity and your value systems and in your integrity basis, you're not going to do well because you're going to be able to falter and change. And you're going to be like a squirrel trying to find any nut that falls on the ground, as opposed to being able to ferociously follow the one tree that you know has all the nuts on it.
Absolutely. Well, we're about to wrap up here. So, what are your final closing thoughts? Where can people find you on social media and where can people sign up for this event?
So most of my stuff is on my Instagram page. It's at 4 weeks to the beach. The number's 4 and 2. So just start typing in the number 4 weeks and I'll pop up. You'll see my ugly face on there. The event is Real Coaches Summit 2023.com. I bought that domain name like an idiot and didn't realize that I'd have to change it at some point, but it's going to live like that forever. So it is what it is. But if you want to see what the speaker topics are, if you want to see what the ticket prices are, if you want to see a little promo video, all that stuff is on the event website. Ticket sales are on that website. Right now we're at 112 sold so far. The goal is 250. The price tier right now is $848, and after the next, so it's up to 200 will be 848, and the last 50 will be 998, which is the full price. But all your meals are included. So think about that. Like you live in Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me how much 3 meals a day in Vegas costs.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. Like people always worry about the ticket price. Well, I can't afford a flight and a hotel. Like hotels at Caesar's Palace for my event are under $200. If you get a room with 2 beds in it and you split it with one of your friends, it's going to be less than $100 a night. Flights to Vegas from most places in the country are direct and relatively inexpensive, especially if you book them far out. And if your ticket price includes all of your meals and you don't have to worry about any of that stuff, you're literally paying one flat fee, showing up, getting everything you need, and leaving that on Tuesday night or Wednesday morning a better coach than you showed up with. So if you guys have any questions for, and by the way, I just want to tell everybody, I'm not the best at what I do. I'm just really good at it and I'm always available. So if you ever need like an ear, if you want to run something by me, if you need my opinion on something, if you have any problems, if I can help you in any way, connect you to somebody that might know more than I do, I am so happy to help because I want this industry to do well. Because if this industry does well, what is it? A rising tide
Lifts
lifts
all
all
ship.
boats, right? Like
Yep.
that's us, man. Like to me, if our industry gets better, then people trust us more and people keep paying us. If people stop trusting us and lose faith in us, then we all suffer. So I think we all need to be able to band together. We don't need to fight with one another on Instagram. We are not one another's competition. If you're
Mhm.
listening to this and you're a coach, another coach isn't your competition. Netflix is your competition. Burger King is your competition. Time management problems are your competition. Emotional health issues are your competition. Other coaches are not your problem. Don't worry about other coaches. If anything, support other coaches.
I love it. Well, I'm going to be linking your info down below this video so you can find the information to Real Coaches Summit 2023 for 2024 in the link down
2025.
or 2025. Yeah, that is so funny to me. It'll forever be Real Coaches Summit 2023. That's so funny.
Whatever.
Um, but dude, yeah, like I said, we're definitely gonna have to have a continued conversation because there's so many little nuggets and rabbit holes that I want to explore and go down. And I think that I have a very different approach when it comes to building a business. I'm not always grind your face off. I'm like, dude, take it chill, have fun with the process, take it nice and slow. You could watch TV, you could take a day off, you can enjoy your life. Like that's my approach. So I would love to put that message out there more. So we'll definitely have you on again in the future.
Thanks, man. Dude. I appreciate the opportunity. You've been nothing but helpful since I've met. Thank you to Lexi for putting us together. You're lucky to have her. She's fucking amazing. She's lucky to have you. I think anybody that's in your circle should be thanking their lucky stars that they have somebody that has authenticity and integrity because there's not a lot of that left in this business.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. All right, man. We'll wrap up here.
Yes,
Peace.
sir.